It's so interesting you say that. So it's like, so why are so many of us struggling? Right? Like we all know it's like you're right. You hear those things, if you find something you love, really enjoy doing it, work hard, but it's we all know how to what we're supposed to do to stay physically well, and we're very much told, almost it's saturated the message these days of what you need to do, and there's so many voices saying so many different things. I think that's a little bit part of the issue at this point, is that what do you listen to, which one's right? And I think it comes down to when you don't have a good sense of who you are and you don't have a good sense of your own self-awareness, it's really easy to get caught up into all the external messaging and to start following messages that aren't coming from you. And so I think that is a little bit of how you can get far away from your own mind body connection.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, it's going to be an interesting one today. And for all those people, they say, well, we know where Canada is, and British Columbia on the West Coast, right? Right. And down the West Coast, we have this big city called Vancouver. We are 500 miles north of Vancouver, which puts us, or 800 kilometers, which puts us in the center of British Columbia, north to south, east to west. Big province. And we live in harmony with nature, lots of forests, lots of lakes, lots of wildlife or companions of this area. Uh, Black bears, grizzlies, caribou, moose, deer, foxes, you name it, we have them all here and living in harmony. Today we have a very, very interesting guest. Her name is Kim Egel. Did I say that correct, your last name?
It's actually eagle, just like the bird.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I say it again. Then we can leave it in. We'll leave it in, obviously. Kim Egel, and Kim is a very, very interesting. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist with over 15 years of experience running a private practice and a total of 20 years working in the mental health field. She's also a former semi professional track and field athlete. Kim combines her athletic background with her extensive education and create therapeutic approach to centering on principles of whole body wellness. Very interesting topic. She also has done boxing, actually, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Not that much. Just started. That's not my claim to fame.
I'd like welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, share with us a bit about your background. Where were you born, in which area? Where did you get your education, in
Mhm.
particular in the area of mental health and wellness?
Yeah.
And then along the way, you obviously were athletic and still are, apparently.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
talk about that a little bit, and then obviously about the topic in particular is wellness and family wellness, health, and the benefits
Yeah.
around it.
That's a loaded question. So, yeah. Well, I'm from a beach town in Southern California called Palos Verdes, and I grew up there, which really is a beautiful place in terms of nature and activity outside, and grew up there. And then in terms of education, I went to school in Santa Barbara for a couple years, and I transferred and did the rest of my undergraduate degree at UC San Diego, and went back up to LA area and went and got my master's in clinical psychology at a school in LA,
Okay.
and here I am. So yeah.
Clinical psychology. What does
Mhm.
that really mean?
Right. So what that means is For me, when I was deciding about what niche I wanted to go into, it's the degree that gives you a more general scope so you can decide once you get that degree what you want to do with it. You could work in agencies, which I did a lot during my internship. So while you're acquiring your hours to become a licensed therapist, you work in all different types of settings. So I have a really big range. I guess that's something that I think really goes into what kind of clinician I am. I have a really big range of the kind of populations I've worked with. So, there was the foster care system, or there was, residential eating disorders, or so in the school systems, I worked a lot with kids, teenagers that were at risk. So I was
Relationships.
relationships, but not so much a couples therapist, which
Right.
really niches in relationships. But absolutely, when you're working with any individual person, you're talking about relationships all the time because that's all what life really is about. So that kind of comes into why I even want to do what I wanted to do. It's just, the one job with all the jobs that are in the world, the one thing you always are around, you have to deal with relationships and people. So I thought,
It's always part of it, right? In some
it's
form. The
it's
identity.
life. It's
Yeah.
life.
So the
Yeah.
other thing that I find interesting is mind body connection.
Mm,
So, and
huge.
I believe that is a very, very important topic because a
Mhm,
lot of times, more recent, at least to me,
mhm,
because what we did before, at least in my world,
mhm,
is that we talked about the body in terms of health issues,
mhm,
and that could be fitness and diet, and then the mind was something different,
mhm.
but that's not really so. Is that
No.
it's the whole body, mind body connection is an issue that you specialize in, I
Mhm,
believe, and much more part of counseling and all the things as we look at an individual, male, female,
mhm.
whatever, then
Yeah.
young, old, that mind body connection is a critical one even as we grow up and develop from a young age forward, and even more so because it's relatively new being talked about in this sense that as you get older, I'm just turned 84 about
Oh,
a week
wow.
and a half ago.
Great.
I call it 84 years young,
I
actually,
love it.
and and
Yeah,
so
it's great.
and mind body connections to me are very very critical, very very important. And the
Mhm,
foundation in my life, we'll talk about that a little bit more, is attitude, passion, work ethic, but follows is success. Not
mhm,
success in business necessarily, but in life, period. Is
mhm,
avoiding the negative. Whatever you do, whatever that may be, give it all that you got, gets the
mhm,
rewarding, and then work hard because it gives you purpose. And then, especially if you do something that you like, and you
mhm.
have a positive attitude, what will follow is success.
It's so interesting you say that. So it's like, so why are so many of us struggling? Right? Like we all know it's like you're right. You hear those things, if you find something you love, really enjoy doing it, work hard. But, it's we all know how to what we're supposed to do to stay physically well, and we're very much told, almost it's saturated, the message these days of what you need to do, and there's so many voices saying so many different things. I think that's a little bit part of the issue at this point, is that what do you listen to? Which one's right? And I think it comes down to when you don't have a good sense of who you are and you don't have a good sense of your own self-awareness, it's really easy to get caught up into all the external messaging and to start following messages that aren't coming from you. And so I think that is a little bit of how you can get far away from your own mind body connection. And yes, I do agree with you where they're so connected. They're not compartmentalized. Us as people, it's not like, okay, eating well, like plenty of people can eat really well, but that doesn't mean you're mentally healthy.
Yeah. And so I'm also an author, and
Mhm.
so the last book that I wrote, we'll talk about the other ones, is uh, Living Young, Dying Old. Is
Mhm.
that that's a picture of me actually.
I
Uh,
love it.
I'm the
Looking good, John.
I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America at
Are you still
84.
competing?
I am,
Wow,
and
that's great.
I qualified for the nationals in the Arnold's
Mhm.
before COVID, and then COVID came, and I'm again getting ready to compete with the Arnold's in 2025, and I'm 85, and
Mhm.
so but the purpose of the book is that age is just a number, but
Mhm.
is important even more so is quality of life. And
Mhm.
and in the book, I'm trying to suggest respectfully to my readers and the people that I talk about around the world
Mhm.
that there is no reason, there's nothing overly complicated about it. Your
Mhm.
body extremely forgiving, and it only will take so much abuse. And if you do
Mhm.
not do something about it, usually the last decade of your life are going to be very, very difficult.
Mhm.
And so they are for and people take hands full of what they call medicines,
Sure,
usually toxic, that will fix one thing, create
sure.
problems with all due respect. I'm not a doc on other
Yeah.
areas. And then that is the body side, then staying fit, healthy. Watch out for your diet. Obviously,
Mhm.
I'm very proactive in that. So is my wife. She's a vegetarian. I'm
Mhm.
vegan, probably 90-10%. And then the mind is comes into it in terms of attitude, passion, work ethic. And then the question, for me, it took me a long time to get there, is
Mhm.
saying, who am I? And the question is so critically important to reconcile with who you are and 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 then the objectives. So many people are critical of themselves in terms of
Right.
this is not right, that's not right, and or I'm not dressing the right way, blah blah blah. So the sooner you can find a direction alone or with help from others or listening to programs like this, then I usually say then in presentations that I do, especially to younger people, high schools, colleges,
Mhm.
universities, is
Mhm.
that there is only one of you in this whole world that is you, and you are special, not better than, but you are special as this
Mhm.
one only individual in this whole world that is like you. So
Mhm.
if things are not quite the way other people think they should be, or you and your mind have the idea that you're not what you should be, then to do work on that or reconcile that in some form, that's saying, okay, I'm satisfied with who I am, but that's easier said than done. For me, it took a
Mhm.
long time in my life to get there.
Right. Well, I mean, with what you said, it's interesting because it's like this fine balance of listening outside of yourself to get some direction, but also knowing when to not listen to the outside voices because that can lead you in a path that's maybe not authentic to you. And so, I agree it's a journey, and it can change too. Your wants and your values and things that are important to you can shift. And so all of that, it just for me, something that has been coming up to me a lot, and you're touching upon it, is with mental health, it's not very spoken to that it takes a lot of mental strength and mental grit. And I think that when we talk about whole body wellness, the physical part and being uncomfortable, like even physically, helps us tolerate the discomfort that we can feel with like emotional difficulty. So I think that's really the bridge for me is just, you know, mental fortitude, right? So that concept that, getting more mentally strong. And when you're just generally more mentally strong, you have the capacity to deal more healthfully with challenges that come your way, both physical and mental. If like you're working your physical muscle, you're going to be even able to handle the physical things that happen and also the mental things. And I think they both work together to help you feel more confident and capable.
Yeah. So how did you get to this point, though?
Mm,
What is the mind-body connection,
yeah.
and why
Okay.
is it so important?
I suppose I want to start with myself. I've always, I mean, I was born just active. And watching how when things got really difficult in my life, just all of it through the years, starting from when I was in elementary school, having athletics and having that source of just how a source of getting confidence in myself and capability and learning to trust my body and all of those concepts really helped me develop a sense of self. And I just, you know, if you just sit around and do nothing for 2 weeks, I mean, go check your mental health. It's just everyone, even if you're not athletic, I definitely, don't want people to think I'm just speaking to people that are active and athletes, but it's like to some degree, everyone, if you want to be a healthy, cohesive person, finding some sort of outlet that helps you feel good in your body and that helps you condition it to some degree
It gives
is
you
part of
purpose, right?
mental health. What's
Yeah.
what's that?
It gives you purpose, right?
It could. I think for some people that are just like, "I don't like being active," right? I think it's trickier for those people, but just finding something, even it could be, "Oh, I go to, hot yoga, but I have a now a community, and that gives me purpose."
Right.
So I think there's just such a bridge and such a rabbit hole of both of those worlds.
So you become very popular in what you do, and a lot of people are connecting to this and saying, "Okay, I like this." So, what do you do in particular? You're not so much into what we call the relationships. That's a special niche, if you wish. But in your case, it deals with the mind body connection in particular. So the people that you are working with, or the persons that you're working with, what age group are they? What
Yeah. Yeah.
are they
So
women or men or combinations?
yeah. So it's not that I don't work with relationships. I mean, that's
No, no.
part of what keeps a person healthy is
Right,
tending to their relationship. So,
right.
um, I think that in terms of the people that come to seek my services, it's, um, y- you know, it's usually, it could be late teens through 60s plus. And I think a lot of the time people come in with a particular issue that's either been going on or it's almost like a trigger issue. Like something could happen that just makes it obvious that that person needs some help. So, and everyone has their own history with therapy. Some people have never been to therapy. Some people have been to therapy for years. So I think it's a lot of the issues that I see are around, transitions in life, whether that be, a divorce or getting married or a move, a new career. It can be around just struggling with anxiety or depression. And, the what's interesting is usually that particular issue that they're coming in for treatment, if you kind of follow the rabbit hole down and do more questioning, it's common that that issue is just more of a that issue that they're coming in for is just more of a result of behaviors that have come to a point that it's just gotten so loud. You kind of spoke to this earlier. It's like until something gets really bad, sometimes as humans, we have a tendency to just keep a cap on it until it gets so loud that we have to do something about it. So that's one type of client that can come to me that's kind of just in panic mode. So it ranges. I don't have this, I think that at this point, I also have a kind of a creative aspect of my business that I really value. I just value so much. I have a small jewelry line business and just creativity and photography. And I think having all these aspects of me and different sides of me help me relate to a lot of different kinds of clients. And there's been studies that have been shown that the most important thing when it comes down to picking a therapist is feeling really understood and heard by that particular person. It outweighs their training, it outweighs their, the population they usually work with, and it outweighs the nature of the issue that the client's coming for treatment for. So that really client relationship, client patient, patient therapist relationship is so, so important. And I feel like all these different aspects of myself, all these different sports I like to do, all these different creative endeavors I like to do, all the travel I like to do, I think that's feels like that's made me a really relatable person that is able to connect with all different kinds of people. So I would more say that's kind of my golden ticket.
So would it be, I'm just speculating now
Mhm.
from my experience, that most of your clients are female because males traditional say, I don't need consulting.
Mhm.
I'm a tough guy. I don't want
Mhm.
to open up all my emotions potentially. And although that is starting
Yeah.
to change somewhat from,
Mhm.
I've been, seeking advice from consultants over the years that have been
Sure.
very, very helpful to me. But
Mhm.
traditionally, males kind of feel, no, 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 I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
Is that changing
It's,
or is that
I've
still?
definitely yeah, like, I would say, a lot of my clientele are female. However, I've had male clients. I still have some male clients, but
Sure, sure.
more so female, yes. I have also had male clients that come in and you can tell it's a little more difficult for them to open up. Those are almost my favorite client sometimes, is just seeing that they want it, but it's so hard, they don't know how to do it, they're so uncomfortable with it. But again, sometimes it's about challenging the resistance and about the discomfort. Right? That's almost what therapy in a nutshell is for everybody. It's not, sometimes I forget how uncomfortable it could be for somebody that's never been to therapy to have a first session with me. Like, I'm sitting there, I do this all day, hours a day, and
Yeah,
I forget how sometimes I see people so nervous, and it's just such a reminder that it's really vulnerable. For
exactly.
I have a lot of female clients that I've
Yeah,
seen equally uncomfortable.
yeah.
So, yeah.
So is a lot of your consulting virtual or is it a lot
Mhm.
in person?
So, because of different telehealth laws and that have opened up, it gives a range for people to not just have to be in San Diego. So,
Exactly.
with my clients that are in San Diego, I do offer beach walk and talk sessions, which has been
Right.
a really cool way to bridge that mind body connection. But I would say probably 80% is virtual.
Yeah. Globally, virtually now, because
Globally,
what
'cause I have I have a coaching aspect of my business, so if that person's, if their need for coming in for treatment doesn't meet medical necessity, I can meet them on a coaching level, so, yeah, it's global.
Yeah, maybe share with us your website as well, and then people as they are watching, they can watch the website or so.
Yeah,
How do they contact you,
yeah.
and
So I
how does it work?
yeah, so I have a website, so it's kimegel.com. And I also have, an Instagram, I have a YouTube channel. I have a pretty active blog on my website that I write a lot about mental health topics that are relevant that I see, with clients, and the issues that I kind of constantly see with clients. I like to pick those topics out and put them into a blog post. So yeah, come say hi on any of those platforms.
So the just give you just a bit of a background on me. I was born in 1940 in
Hmm.
Holland, northeastern part of Holland, the very top of Holland. Holland, relatively small. I'm sure some of the people in Holland are watching our podcast. I know they do, because a lot of people in Europe, as you well know,
Yeah.
speak fluently English amazingly. And,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
so English is very dominant language around the globe.
Hmm.
And so uh, it was during the Second World War, so it was not good. Got exposure to as a young boy, then about 4 or 5 years old, saw far too much that I should not have seen.
Yeah. Well.
Was affected by the typical things of war, hunger,
Mhm.
seeing a lot of things that we should, as I said, not have seen. Then we were liberated by the Allied forces. On the Canadian Army actually liberated our part of Holland April the 12th, 1945, and made such an
Mhm.
impression on me that I always knew from that point forward I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And
Wow.
and it took me till I was 23 until I did that. But the war
Yeah.
years in particular, my mom and dad were married when 1938. They were still young. They were in love. They had everything that you could possibly wish for. Very quickly, they had a boy, then a girl, and he had a good job. They rented a beautiful house, so they were deeply in love, and they were in paradise. And then
Mhm.
overnight, when Hitler decided to invade Poland initially, and then the fear of war, and then
Yeah.
the danger of them moving into the western part of Europe. My dad was drafted into the Dutch army, and the last time that they heard from him or saw him was before the bombing of Rotterdam, which killed thousands and thousands of people. So my
Mhm.
mom, then pregnant with me, would not know for the next 5 years if he lived or died.
Mhm.
And so, and was alone with then three little kids.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and I still remember in 1943, on forward, when I was 3.5 years old. It's amazing
Mhm.
how we remember. I
Mhm.
remember the sound of hundreds of planes, bombers in the air of the Allied
Yeah.
forces bombing the north western part of Germany, where all the uh, weapon factories were. And my mom used to take us outside, and we on a flat roof that we had, not to watch the planes, hundreds of planes. The sound of it, I still, even as a kid, remember the
Mhm.
amazing sound of that. And in the distance, we saw the sky being red, where they bombed, and so she felt safer outside than inside. And then
Mhm.
I remember 1944, when they cut off all the food to Holland. A lot of kids died. A lot of older people that were vulnerable died, in particular, thousands of them. And we, as kids, then used to go every morning with gunny sacks into the railroad yard and pick up anything burnable and edible. The
Wow.
reason that we did as kids is because they would not shoot us, but they put us one, and then we'd be back the following day. And then, so, and then the winter 1944, 45 was the coldest on record. And I can still, even now, still feel 4.5, 5 years old, that we're sitting in a little room that they heated, and it was very hot and very cold at the same time. I can
Yeah.
still feel the hunger, even now, 80 years later, in the cold. And
Wow.
then the fear of losing that only one parent that took care of us, because everybody else had the same issues and were trying to survive, and
Mhm.
people being dragged out of their houses to go be sent to the work camps, or worse, to the concentration camps, all in our region. There was a lot of anxiety that we
Mhm.
felt as kids, and and in fact, got counseling for, uh, by coincidence, actually, already when I was in my 50s, for the inner child. I didn't even know what
Mhm.
it was, actually, but
Yeah.
until we did counseling on relationship issues with my, now my wife, but then in the relationship, that the counselor said, "I'd like to talk to John on his own on the issue of the inner child," and he explained to us what that could be. And I had no
Mhm.
idea. And so that's what
Mhm.
we did by agreement, and
Yeah.
very, very emotional, as you well know. And
Mhm.
so but that's when I was in my 50s. So
Mhm.
the academically I was not a success story. Failed grade 3, failed grade 7 3 times, and everybody said, "What are you going to do with this guy? Maybe send him to the mentally challenged school." Well, he said, "No, we're not going to do that." So
Mhm.
we're going to teach him a trade. So I became a furniture maker, and
Okay.
at 13, and and that I loved the lumber side. My grandfather was a master carpenter. My dad worked in lumber, and then still had the dream of going to Canada, and I tried to go
Mhm.
when I was 17. My parents wouldn't let me too young. Then I was drafted into the Air Force for 2 years, and then I decided to go when I was 23. And
Wow.
so I started with nothing. I couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job.
Wow, John.
Yeah, I started with
Yeah.
a suitcase, and then I knew I wanted to go to Western Canada. To That's where all the trees are. I wanted to build a lumber mill, and so when I arrived in Vancouver, was went through the immigration department, and fortunately there was a German fellow working there. I told him what I wanted to do, and he said, "Prince George, that's where you have to go. That's where they're building all the mills and all the pulp mills. That's where the opportunities are." And as I
Mhm.
said earlier, there was 500 miles north or 800
Yeah.
kilometers for our friends in Europe. And so the bus, Greyhound bus, 12 or 14 hours, and I can still see where it, about 2, 3 blocks away from here where it stopped.
Mhm.
I had my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and then uh, I counted my money at least 3 times. I had
Yeah.
$25.47.
Wow.
But I had a dream of building a lumber mill, and and so what it says on here is that my employees gave that to me, actually 25.47. But what it says is, as I said before, my foundation attitude. I've
Mhm.
always had this, no matter how tough things are. I know tomorrow's going to be
Mm.
better. Passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%, and then work ethic, that even now at 84, uh,
Mhm.
I work harder than anybody. I still get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed,
Mhm.
and I'm always in a hurry. I always think I'm late,
Hmm.
and every day is a good day for me. And
Can
so
I
that
well,
so
it
that's kind of my
it's so
background.
in that's it's I love what you're saying because here's my question for you. What struggle that you had to overcome? Like, I can't even, like, so many people these days didn't face the kind of struggle that you're talking about, and it sounds like to me, your struggle was almost your North Star. Like, it's what
Yeah,
created all these really, like, even today, you're 84, you're getting up at 5:30, you're working harder than anyone. Do you, because it's your life, right? But what I see a lot is the capacity for, it's like when someone experiences hardship and struggle, it's almost like there's 2 paths you can take. You can
exactly,
go down with the ship and
exactly.
just completely go down with the ship,
Or
or you go the complete other way. There's no neutral. There's absolutely no neutral. And I'm just curious if, like, you didn't experience the kind of really just, I mean, war, these like really, really intense challenges in life. Do you think you'd be where you're at?
I believe that. Oh, are you still there,
Yeah,
Kim?
I'm
Oh, yeah.
here.
So
Mhm.
I believe that the one of the challenges for me was, especially in the schooling side of things, kids
Mhm.
can be very hard on each other. When I
Right.
failed grade 3, I don't know
Mhm.
anybody that failed grade 3. I did a presentation to about 100, 200 people, and then way in the
Mhm.
back was a lady who said, "I failed grade 3." I said, "Oh, well, just the two of us then." So, but,
Yeah.
so now kind of looking at it that way. And then the other part was that doing the same in grade 7, failing at 3 times, and kids are hard on each other, that
Sure.
the so all the friends that I had, all of a sudden I became a laborer, and so that I lost the connection with my
Mhm.
friends. And then the question, that is such an important one that you deal with all the time and your clients,
Mhm.
I'm sure, and I did. And that's why I
Mhm.
said, who am I? And I knew that I was very
Mhm.
smart on numbers. I was very good at writing, but
Mhm.
I was not good in this traditional
Yeah.
schooling system. And
Yep.
and it took me until 1997
Mhm.
that I found out the key to a lot of those questions that I had in my mind.
Mhm.
And so what happened then, 1997, I was already
Mhm.
57 years old. And so I was already in Prince George here. I was already successful as a business person. And a lot of people
Mhm.
said, "Oh man, you're so successful." I didn't feel that way. And
Yeah.
and so and so then I walked into a store here
Mhm.
in January of 1997. And the reason that I know exactly when, because I picked up a book, and
Mhm.
this is the book actually that I
Yeah.
picked
What
up.
book is that?
This is the book, Driven to Distraction,
Prevented Distraction.
written by Dr. Edward Hollowell, medical
Mhm.
doctor. And as I
Mhm.
opened the book,
Mhm.
it was about ADHD. And I
Mm.
said, "Oh my God, that's me." And so, and I wrote in the book here, this is the actual book. I wrote in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am. And the date is January 1997.
Mhm.
And so that explained a lot of things to me. But it
Mhm.
implied in a way that it was a mental disorder of some sort.
Mhm.
And until I read the book and read it several times, and then started Googling about it, then
Mhm.
I came to the conclusion that it is, for me, a superpower. It
There you go.
allowed me to do all these
Yep.
things. And
Right.
even today, when I'm an author, I'm obviously very active in
Yep.
podcasting. I'm a speaker, in demand speaker, and I have 10 successful businesses, including lumber business. People say to me, "How do you do all this stuff?" I say,
Mm.
ADHD, that's how. And
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, it's all about how you self-identify, no matter what.
correct, correct.
Right.
And
Right.
so once I then that then kind of explained in a way who I am. And then
Mm.
the other part about it is that, the ADHD, uh, and Dr. Halliwell that wrote the book, and I'm going to show it again for people that, because there's a lot of people in the world that have
Yeah.
challenges with this, is
Mhm.
that you are my podcast number 356. And I podcasted on 203. Dr. Hollowell, who wrote this
Um,
book in 1993. I
mhm.
bought it in
I
1997, and it
Mhm.
changed my life. And
Yeah, wow.
so the podcast number 203
Mhm.
can be found all over the place. On the Brink, it's John A. Brink, podcast number 203. And so it's Dr. Hollowell. He's the expert. I'm the expert in terms of I lived it, so did he. He has ADHD and
Mhm.
dyslexia, and so do I.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
the so as we discussed it in saying that I believe that probably 20% of the population, in my opinion, ADHD.
Mhm.
He said, no, John, probably 25%. I agree with him. And then
Mhm.
in terms of, like I've been very involved in business, a lot of
Mhm.
successful, and the operative is
Mhm.
successful business people or entrepreneurs over the years,
Mhm.
and I'm still involved in Miss Many, that
Yeah.
I suggested to Dr. Halliwell that likely of the successful entrepreneurs, probably 50% of them ADHD. Said, no, John, probably
Mhm.
75%.
Mhm.
I
Totally
agree
agree
with
with you.
him.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because I mean, I have a lot of clients, that it's again, it's if you're coming to me and you're looking to go, "Oh, this is why I can't do that. I have ADHD, so I can't do all these things because I can't pay attention, so I'm not gonna pay attention." Or, "You know what? I'm gonna use this to, like," if you think about it, like, having laser focused attention on something, like, and working with how you are. I don't even like to I've had so many clients that are like, "Tell me if I have it." Like, "Do I have it? Do I not have it? Do I do have it?" And it's like a diagnosis is for the clinician to help the clinician treat the client. But unfortunately, what I see happen sometimes is a client want the label so they don't have to take action, or
Exactly.
they can take a, medication that's supposed to help it. Or so that's like, and even when you talk about physicality and ADHD and having an outlet that, you know, helps your mind just quiet it and focus it. And when you talk about flunky, so I flunked first grade. I had to repeat it twice. And it's funny because I do think that was part of my issue too, is like I have an ability where it's like I need a lot of that's why athletics is so huge. It gets my energy out almost if I don't do something physical. I feel like a pent up pit bull and I can't focus and my energy's scattered. But I also think it's my genius when I know I'm like really on fire. Like it is. Maybe you're I think when you can find how to use it for you, anything in life, even a tragedy, how is that you kind of made tragedy for you. Look at your life, like, look at where you are because all of those really difficult things that happened that, by the way, made you really have to get mentally tough and have a lot of grit.
Yeah,
And sometimes I see in this day and age, I don't see a lot of kids and young adults being exposed to difficulty. And so
exactly.
when you're not building that mental strength and that mental grit, then all of a sudden everything's a tragedy. And that's a big issue I'm seeing lately.
Yeah, I agree. And so what it did for me, it brought me closer to who am I? And
Yeah.
then to reconcile with who I am. And then the other part that was important for me is that I then felt I had to share it with others. And
Yeah.
so, and that's what I did. And then I wrote a book
Yeah.
about it as well.
Okay.
And, so ADHD Unlocked, very popular actually. And
Great.
so you can open
Great.
the book anywhere and then either go
Yeah.
this way or the other. It's
Yeah.
always interesting. But it was about 5, 6 years ago that people had said to me, you have such an interesting life. You should be writing a book about it. Well, writing books is not easy, and
Mhm.
and so, but at the same time, the I knew about 5, 6 years ago. If I don't do it now, it will never happen. So the first book
Mhm.
that I wrote is Against All Odds,
Oh,
and
wow.
it took me 80 years to live it. 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And it's not
Yeah.
about hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is. Just, no, it isn't. It is all those ups and downs, including,
Yeah.
all the things that are delicate and vulnerable. And I believe it
Mhm.
is very important for me to share my journey and
Mhm.
and including all the even the delicate periods of seeking counseling and wondering
Mhm.
what do I do now or who
Yeah.
am I and
Mhm.
in relationships because especially a lot of people as you already indicated and I found over my life and also
Mhm.
in podcasting that
Mhm.
have gone through different forms of trauma and
Mhm.
are locked in and have difficulty to get out of it or reconcile. You probably have a better idea about it, but those are the people that you probably see that have built the
Mhm.
courage to contact
Mhm.
Kim Egel because
Mhm.
they feel that they need help to that
Right.
guides them from
Right.
that to the more positive way of
Mhm.
reconciling and getting to the point of who am I?
Yeah. I think that when I'm listening to you, one thing that I hear is What gets in the way, and I think it's gotten really thick this day and age, is the distraction that keeps you from even being conscious of what you need and what you need to go toward that's healthy. There's so much distraction, and I think even when you say like, "But I have ADHD, so I get really distracted," and then right? So it's in order to know who you are and to know the action steps to take to go on a path toward your most fulfilled life or your, you know, good things for you, it you have to know yourself. And when there's so much distraction, I think that's what I see a lot is trying to help people quiet so they can actually hear themselves well enough to know to start asking those deeper questions. But it's gotten so tricky even just in the last decade for sure, 5 years even more so, because there's so much noise.
Yeah.
It takes, like, more than ever to have to protect your energy just from the pinging phone or this pace of life, especially I can only speak for myself with living in the US. There's just a pace that's just it's almost normal to just be exhausted. It's
Yeah.
just there's normalcy and just go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting.
So much different, Ken, because when I came here in 1965, with my suitcase, three books, and the $25 47 with a dream,
Yeah,
that then my parents that still were in Holland, obviously, I would send them a telegram and
wow,
saying, I'm doing okay, I arrived, stop,
yeah,
and I'm in Prince George, that is
mhm,
800 kilometers north of Vancouver. Stop. I found a job. I'm a cleanup man. I made $2 and I'm making $2 an hour, and I'm
mhm,
dreaming about building a lumber mill. So
wow,
but and then the following week maybe we have a letter where now I take my iPhone, I push
yeah,
the button, I talk to my sister within seconds if I want to
yeah,
see her at the same time in Holland or
yeah,
wherever. We are there. You are in San Diego, the
mhm,
most southern point of the United States, California. I love San Diego. It's the
mhm,
best climate. I'm
mhm,
in Prince George, and probably to fly from here to San Diego probably would be 6, 7, 8 hours. I would think I would have to go through Vancouver, gets a flight
mhm,
from Vancouver to LA, or I'm sure there are also direct flights to. But the point is that all that distance away,
mhm,
and we are interacting here,
mhm,
building a relationship between you and me, talking about some of the most delicate areas and issues in someone's life, and then
mhm,
knowing that I know you're very popular on podcasting, so am I, and so top 1% globally. That we already, you and me already know that we have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people will be watching us around the world with issues not unsimilar than the ones that we are touching on that can be so critical. And that's why I said at the opening, who am I? It took
mhm,
me a long time to get to who am I when I
mhm,
was found a book of Dr. Helliwell in 1997. It took me 5 years before I go to my doc that delivered our two daughters and was a
mhm,
personal friend because I was ashamed of this mental disorder and said to him,
yeah,
he said, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so,
mhm,
and yes, I did. And then the more I found out about it, and that's why it's so
mhm,
important for me to speak about it and talk about it, or
yeah,
at least share my history on about it, is that it changed my life because then I knew that the more I saw about it, that it is a superpower, that it is
right,
not a liability. And even now I do that. I feel I have an obligation to speak to other
Mhm.
people about it on my podcasting, but also younger people in high schools, colleges are
Yeah.
not solely about that, but as for one
Yeah.
part of it. It's not a
Yeah.
liability. It can well be an asset. So do not get overburdened by it or mentally, physically about it.
Mhm.
Is saying it can be an asset. It makes you different, but it is
Mhm.
being more and more recognized globally. Probably, I would suggest, Cam, that probably, and Dr. Halliwell probably agrees with me, between 25 and 30% of the populations globally, ADHD.
Mhm. Well, something that I think is so important to say, and I feel like I wasn't able to say it as much years ago because this was my experience with being in the mental health field for 20 years. I've seen a lot of kids, concerned parents coming to me, kids that are, getting medicated because they have ADHD. And what I will confidently say, and it's my experience on a personal level with just friends that struggle, that say they, have ADHD or whatever it is, that they are the most creative, interesting, outside the box, tend to be outside the box people that are moving mountains. They are the
Exactly.
people that tend to break through the conventional way of thinking, and because they're doing things really their way, and I have always gave that message to the kids I work with that have a lot of shame. You said a huge thing. It sounds like to me what really changed your life was when you saw it as a superpower, when you were able to see your ADHD in a way that worked for you. So I also too want to mimic that message of truly, more so as a human saying this than a therapist. Some of the most amazing people that I have met in my life, both clients and personally, have that label on them.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And so
100%.
and I feel the obligation about it to
Mhm,
speak about it and saying the same as business. I've been, and it's not about me and business, how successful I am, but I've been very, very successful. And
mhm,
so what makes me successful compared to people that have the traditional way of learning about
mhm.
business is they follow usually a box,
Yeah,
where
right.
what I do, I'm usually
Mhm.
coasting around the outside of the box and saying, how about
Same.
this? How about that? Why are we
Yeah,
not doing this? It makes them feel uncomfortable
yeah,
to a certain
right.
extent, but that's what
Yeah.
kind of makes me successful. And the
Mhm,
other benefit that I have is that I'm not a good reader, but I'm a good
mhm,
writer.
mm,
And obviously I'm a good presenter and speaker, but that took time for me to develop
sure.
as well. I have an amazing memory, even at 84, and uh,
Mhm,
and I
yeah.
believe I'm a visionary where I look forward 5, 10, 15, 20 years and say, where are
Mhm,
we going with our business? What does it look like? And
mhm,
then I love podcasting,
mhm.
and sharing, with hundreds of thousands of people our
Yeah.
views and our interaction, like what you and me are having now about
Mhm,
these topics that are so critical and affect so many people. By sharing our experiences, I believe is very, very important.
mhm. How have you been able to, because I think this is really beneficial, because a lot of people that have ADHD say, "Well, I can't focus. I don't know how to because I have that, I just can't." How have you been able to harness that, kind of tendency to, like, how have you been able to be successful and be so disciplined?
So the interesting part about it is that I have to follow it. I have to follow a routine. So
Mhm,
what I do is that I like to build businesses that are very, very successful and that are very mechanical and are successful. Once I get them to that point, I become bored. And so I'm looking
mhm,
for other challenges, and that's
mhm,
what I do. The other
yeah,
part is that, once I take it serious, at one point in my life, I nearly died. In 2008, I had a case of diverticulitis,
mhm,
and diverticulitis when you have challenges with your colon. Mine And every
Okay.
so often, what happens, it breaches, and then all the toxins get to your body, and so
Oh,
you
wow.
need help fairly, fairly quickly. They took 20 centimeters out of my colon,
Oh,
and
wow.
I came that close to not
Yeah.
making it. And then I knew I had to start becoming very serious about diet, and I did
Mm,
that. Listen more to my wife, who's a vegetarian, and then the other part that I did, in a very serious way, started to going to the gym. But in order for me to do that, I needed a coach to guide me, but also I need the purpose of going there. And when I become
mhm,
highly, and that kind of answers your question likely, is once I focus on something, then
mhm.
I give it all that I got.
Yeah.
And I do
Yeah.
that with obviously going to the gym. After doing that for about 6 years with a coach, one day somebody came up to us and said, "Hey, John, have you ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me? Yeah." And so that's what I did, and hence
Mm,
that this, and I take it very very very
mhm.
serious, give it everything that I
Yeah.
got. That's what I do, and that's what I do
Well,
in business.
it's interesting to listen to because it's like you're also doing something you're really listening. Like when someone says something, "Hey, you should compete." You don't a lot of this the average person just, "That's a thought. It was a comment, it was a thought, it goes away." It sounds like it so many different points of your journey. Like when someone was like, "You should go here. This is where you should build your mill," right? You that thought stayed there and you literally acted on it.
Yeah,
These little like I kind of see life like that. Like we're getting delivered these breadcrumbs. These like things are being just kind of like sprinkled on us, but listening to it is what is the game changer, and I'm just hearing how much you've listened to these really benign comments by really just strangers at some point, just some random guy that pointed you north,
yeah,
but you it sounds like you had a physical kind of intuitive connection with the comment, and
correct,
you really paid attention.
correct,
So
and that,
that's what I'm trying to get people to kinda wake up to, but you can't do
yes.
that when you're really distracted or you're too busy or you're unaware of who you are.
Exactly. And that is the benefit of it in a way. And that's what I like about the podcasting. And the other thing I'm working on towards probably early in the new year, I'm going to start a platform,
Okay.
that speaks about not only these issues, but issues like that. And I think looking around the world, that's what makes you so successful. And your niche of the market, in particular, mind building connection, mind body connection
Mhm.
related issues, are really topics that are not very much known, I say respectfully,
Mm,
and are in demand because once people listen to you in a podcast like that, they make the connection and say, "Yes, I'm interested in that," but there is not
mhm,
much information available. And I believe it
mhm,
is probably an issue that is wide and globally,
mhm.
really, you know?
It's so interesting that you say that. I'm from such a hub where that is such a topic. It is such a, just where I live and the clients I seek, like this mind body connection. It's almost very trendy where I'm from. So
Right.
to hear you kind of offer me that, a different perspective that this is a really foreign concept to some people is, I think sometimes you don't realize how, something you think is so normal is really foreign to someone and it's figuring
Yes.
out how to, you know, um, dumb it down or explain it or, you know,
Or
not just
unblock
assume
it
that
and
everybody knows. Yeah.
saying, what
Mhm.
really does it mean and why and how? All of those things
Yeah.
are important. Kim,
Right. John.
it has been an amazing podcast. We covered a lot of grounds. We need to do this again. And I'm
Yeah.
going to mention to Scott in the next 6 or 8 months, we should have, get in touch again and do more of my podcasting. I'm also going to send you copies of my books,
I
all
would love
four
that.
of them. I'll
I
sign
would
them
love
for
it.
you. and
Great.
we'll get those out in the next week or so.
Okay. That sounds great.
Kim, and then for all the people watching us from around the world, that Kim's, do you want to give us your contact point again, Kim, for the
Yeah,
people watching us?
sure. So I have a website. It's just kimegel.com. And on that site, it links to my YouTube channel, my Instagram. Um, so come message me, say hello, and that's a good way to get a hold of me.
Excellent, Kim. And then for all those people watching us from around the world, subscribe to our podcasting, both Kim's and mine, and like it and share it with others and make comments on it. It will stimulate both Kim and myself and others to speak more about topics like that and share it with the rest of the globe. Obviously, we
Mhm.
know that podcasting is exploding around the world, and we want to share our views and our experiences with as many people as possible around the world. Kim, it was a pleasure and a privilege. Let's stay in touch.
Same, I'd love to. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kim.